Hello and welcome back to another edition of The End Game. Today, we will be recording podcast number 6 with a very exciting title of How Will Digital Pathology Change the Laboratory Diagnostic Landscape? And I could not ask for a better person to be with today. I've got Mr. Jim Billington. I'm just so honored to have you here today, Jim. So excited to have you here. I'm going to give them a little bit of information about your background, and then we can jump right into our podcast. So you've got quite an impressive background, Jim. I have to say, he is the current CEO and co-founder of Versant Diagnostics. Also, I did not know this about you, Jim. You were the previous co-founder and COO at American Esoterics. In addition to the prior and co-founder and senior VP of operations and on the board of directors at Ameripath. And in prior life, you were the VP of finance and CFO for the Western Division of LabCorp. That is just such an impressive resume. I think I also left out that you were the former president and COO at Inform Diagnostics. Did I miss anything?
No, you covered it very, very well, and I appreciate the kind words on my background there. But yeah, it's all a testament to the fact that I'm getting long in the tooth, I think. But yeah.
No, I think it's such an impressive background. And, before we jump into our podcast, I always like to start my podcast with kind of a fun fact about our guest. And I did a little bit of digging, and I found out, Jim, I want to see if this is true, but I found out that you actually graduated from the official Dairy Queen Management School and that you owned and operated your own Dairy Queen in Nashville, Tennessee. Is that true?
It actually is. Yes, I am the proud graduate of Dairy Queen U, and that was a very fun couple of weeks up there. I also passed food safety school while I was up there also. And yeah, owned and ran a Dairy Queen for about a year until we merged a pathology company I'd started into Ameripath. And at that point, I had to move to South Florida, and I didn't figure I could manage a Dairy Queen from 1,000 miles away. So I went ahead and sold.
Well, that is so awesome. When I found that out, I was like, that is super cool because, my favorite thing growing up is a blizzard. So, and I still love them, right?
Yeah.
Not so good for your health, but that's
amazing.
amazing.
That was one of my bigger accomplishments. There was during the year that I owned it, I didn't really gain any weight, which was, that's I usually don't have that much willpower. So I was very proud of myself.
That is hilarious. I love that. When I found that out, I was like, "Ooh, this is juicy. I'm so excited I get to share this."
Yeah.
It's super, super cool. Well, I appreciate once again you being here today. I'd like to jump right into today's episode to talk a little bit more about digital pathology. And I think a good starting point for our viewers and our audience would be to talk a little bit about Versant Diagnostics and how was it that you came about, founding Versant, and what was your vision for Versant, and then where are you all today?
Well, great question. So I was looking, I founded a couple of companies in the past and was really looking at starting another one and was not necessarily looking at pathology. I was looking at anything from maybe a roll-up of automobile collision centers. I consider myself a bit of a shade tree mechanic to, a number of other different things. But when Philips got FDA approval for a primary diagnosis, that got my attention. So I spent some time with some Philips people, including Andy Moy, who's now the CEO of Page AI, and really became intrigued with where digital pathology might lead and began to realize this could be sort of a disruptive, game-changing technology that is really needed and for the good of pathology. Andy actually pointed me to Dr. Van Adwana in Chicago. So after meeting with Andy, I went to Chicago, spent some time, really a day and then several days on the phone with Dr. Adwana. And from there, we really created the concept of Versant Diagnostics. The mission really is to drive, in our small sector of healthcare, to drive the adoption of digital pathology, to marry digital pathology with the best pathologists out there, to create better outcomes for patients on multiple levels. And So in terms of where we're at with that, stage one is really acquiring the best pathology groups that we can find out there. Uh, and not all are, really are right for us, but we really look for some, the best quality pathologist, and then to provide the capital for them to be able to go digital and kind of take us into this new era. And we've made great progress. We've raised plenty of capital through our great private equity partners at Iron Path Capital, and things are really going according to plan, really going very, very well. We're very excited about our future.
I'm so excited, and Jim, I had the pleasure of working with you and Rob, Albert, and your entire team over the course of the last year, really, on a fairly significant deal with the Dow Chase deal. And I just saw so many enhancements that you all were able to offer them. The 11 plus pathologists, right, and they cover so many different hospital systems, and they were looking to go into digital pathology, but I think they just needed that additional investment. They needed that partner. And so that was like the idea of a perfect fit, right? And so I'm just so excited to see you all making some great leaps and bounds. I know you've grown significantly, not just doing the Dow Chase deal, but you've done many other deals and have many in the pipeline. So I'm just very, very proud of you. I think one of the things that I get asked a question about, and I'm sure you do, is what is digital pathology? Maybe you can share with the viewers a little bit more about the basic concept of what is digital pathology.
Yeah, if you simplify it, 85% of pathology, I would say, historically has been a pathologist diagnosing cancer by looking at tissue on a slide under a microscope. Digital pathology is taking that slide and running it through a machine to digitize it so that now a physician or pathologist can look at that on a computer screen. Now, this then lends itself to improvements in productivity just because of the improved ergonomics, but also the introduction of things like artificial intelligence. And so, again, we really view this as a once in a generation disruptive technology at a time, and we'll probably talk later, that is really very much needed in this space.
Yeah, no, I could not agree with you more. And I'm hearing a lot of pathologists talk about wanting to go into digital pathology and wanting to know, or let's just say that they've grown significantly. They see the need for it, but they may not have the capital to get there. So I think what you guys are doing is fantastic. What do you think some of the benefits are of going digital and as far as, to the health sector as a large and as a whole?
If I simplify that as well, I would say improved access and more accurate results. Um, in America right now, there's already an emerging pathologist gap. We've seen a decline in the number of pathologists, fewer students picking pathology in college. And so we're seeing an increasing gap or a reduced number of pathologists at a time when the number of cancer cases are increasing. And
Yeah.
further sort of complicating that situation is that I read a study the other day where I think it's like 65% of all pathologists are 55 or older. So increasingly, we're not going to have enough physicians to diagnose cancer and some of these other disease states out there. And so digital pathology, the improved productivity that comes from it, is really going to help us bridge that gap. If you think of it just in the terms of the United States, there are pathology deserts already in our country. Typically, you think of the rural areas. If you go beyond our boundaries, I've read a stat one time that said 80% of all the properly trained pathologists are in North America. I don't know if that's exactly right, but I think the general story that number tells you is yeah, they're either in North America or in Europe. There are countries that don't even have a pathologist in Africa, South America, or they might have one or two. So there is so much need and demand for pathology, and these new technologies are going to increase our reach and our accessibility as obviously one of the most important diagnostic tools out there.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I've been hearing about digital pathology for years, and I'm kind of curious from your perspective, with the need for digital pathology, why do you think the transition has been so slow? I mean, it just seems like we've been hearing about this for so many years. So what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think, if you look at like an individual, and really pathology is still very fragmented. It's still a whole bunch of little pathology groups or smaller pathology groups out there. And for them, looking at going digital, you've got to acquire capital or have them. It's not a cheap thing to do, and then you've got the implementation risk. And so I think all those two things together can tend to be a little overwhelming. In a macroeconomic sense, I look at this. There are basically three cohorts of entities that will ultimately drive going digital. And one day it will become the standard.
Yeah.
And so those three cohorts really are either hospital systems, where 50% of these cases come from basically individual physician practices, and I've said some will do it, but many will not because of the risk inherent with it and the capital. And the third cohort are the large commercial players such as Versant. And I think it's that third cohort ultimately. I would say penetration right now is less than 10% in the commercial market of digital pathology. And so we've talked about that increasing gap or divide between demand for pathology or cancer diagnosis and the reduced number of pathologists. And so that third cohort is going to be what drives ultimately us reaching a point where it is 100% or something close to that, the market standard. And to me, within that sort of an interesting sub factor is that many times you kind of hear people say, well, private equity and healthcare is not a good marriage. I can't speak to it on all levels, but in this space, to get digital, which is an absolute necessity, private equity is so important. Either companies like mine that are private equity backed that have the capital to be able to execute these plans, or companies that are maybe much larger than me, and you look at a large lab company or something like that, who were at least at one point in time private equity backed. You need that risk capital in order, I think, to bridge the gap over into greater adoption of this very obviously needed technology or technologies.
I think you're such a visionary. That's one of the things I really admire about you, Jim. You really are. You're an incredible visionary, and there's a lot of people out there talking about it, but you're doing it, right? And I think one of the keys, like you said, yes, getting the private equity backing, but the fact that, your team and all your experience, right, and your background and your successful track record. So it just makes for a great marriage, and you guys are really pulling it off well. So congratulations on that. I'm
Yeah, I've
kind of
been
curious.
very blessed to pull together a very strong team here, and many of them I've known and worked with in the past, but we've also got a team of other folks here too that again have just exceeded my expectations when I've hired them, and every day I walk into the office, I feel so blessed to be surrounded by so much talent.
I love hearing you say that as a leader. I think that is so, so critical. And I mean, honestly, when things are meant to be, they kind of fall into place. And with your background and your successful track record, you certainly have pulled, the best of the best from the industry. So I definitely applaud you for that. I'm curious, what are some of the costs and benefits to individual pathology practices of transitioning over to digital pathology?
Yeah, great question. I would say the costs basically fall into three buckets. Scanners, that you're talking six figures for that. Middleware such as image management system or AI, and again, you're especially if you're looking at going enterprise wide, again, you're talking six figures for that. And then finally, storage, and that can vary quite a bit depending upon the resolution that you store at, and how long you're going to keep things, and things of that nature. But it's a very costly proposition. The benefits are the improved productivity of the pathologist, and even if you just do basic digital pathology without artificial intelligence, there's a lot of studies out there that show you can get a 20 to 25% improvement in productivity just with the basic technology as it exists today, which is important to think about too, because this is a very early stage industry or endeavor, and the tools are going to get a lot better one day. And so even in our early archaic stages right now, we're seeing that style of improved productivity. I think once AI gets increasingly integrated into it, we're going to see those numbers go up quite a bit. If you look at radiology, in the 15 or 20 years they've been digital, they've had 50% improvements in productivity. And from from what I hear from that space as well, they think they can get even better, another 25% improvement or so.
Wow,
Um,
that's significant.
and it's not through making people necessarily work harder. It's just by making it easier for them to do their job and aiding them in doing their job. So it's a very exciting dynamic. I think also some of the benefits are, the ease and the portability of the images, which there are multiple levels upon which one can also reduce their operating costs. So if you think about digital pathology, initially you're adding a step to the process. You're putting a scanner in there, you're scanning the slide, then it gets sent to the physician. That scanner represents an extra operational step. But around that, there are costs that can be reduced also. Those are how we see the benefits.
Yeah, no, there's certainly a lot of benefits. That was a very great job at articulating that. I mean, with all of the benefits, I mean, there's obviously going to be some cons as well, right? I mean, I'm curious what
Mhm.
you think are some of the shortcomings of the new technologies in the current state in the market. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I sure can. Great question. The biggest shortcoming, I would say, is probably interoperability. And the way to think about that is, uh, and the biggest of those, I would say, is pushing the final results and the sign out from the image management system, or this middleware between the scanner and the computer screen for the pathologist, pushing that then back into the LIS. Uh, Most people I talk to point their fingers at the LIS companies or whatever, but nonetheless, there's that. So that manifests in a pathologist necessarily having two screens on his or her desk today. But I say that with the realization that we're still seeing big improvements in productivity. And so just imagine what it'll be when we clear that. And that's clearly a solvable problem.
No,
But that,
absolutely.
but today that element of interoperability is an issue. And another one on the same level, the AI companies aren't, that again, they're just getting going, and they are not necessarily always perfectly integrated with the image management system or the LIS. Also, there may be scenarios for a case that is run through AI wherein a pathologist might have to have three screens or monitors on their desk to manage a particular case. So those are that's kind of the clumsiness of it presently, but that will all be resolved one day.
You mentioned AI. Oh my gosh, right? Things are really rapidly changing before us, especially for the folks like you and me who have been in this industry for 30 plus years. I mean, things are changing drastically. And, from your perspective, how advanced is AI for digital pathology and what can we expect in the future?
I would say it's not advanced at this point. With all due respect to the people that are developing it, but I think they'd probably say the same thing. It's got a long way to go. If you think of it of like on an industry curve, until an industry is ultimately mature, we're still at the very bottom of that curve, and it has a long way to go. There's not really great diagnostic assistance tools for all disease states presently. I think ultimately, large language models will be used to pull in more information to the pathologist to help him or her with their diagnosis preclinically. And so there's a lot of stuff. I think ultimately that will happen. That's not there yet. And so I'd say if you think of it like a baseball game and AI, we're in the first inning, really.
Right. Yeah, I think that's true in a lot of cases amongst a lot of, spaces, in the country right now. Do you think ultimately there will be additional reimbursement from payers for whole slide imaging or AI in the future?
Yeah, I'm going to say no. I mean, I don't know if there will be or not. And the reason I say no is, at least for, in our world here at Versant, we are not analyzing this. I mean, ultimately, you know, you know, it's for the good of patient care and and healthcare at large for pathology to go digital. But at the same time, you can't. I mean, we do have to pay for it, and you have to make a return on it. So, having said that, we are not counting on new reimbursement or new revenue flows for our modeling of it. It's really got to come more from the efficiencies, both on the physician side, while at the same time maintaining job satisfaction for those people. And then the things that we can also do on an operating level to have this help us save some money. So it's going to be more on a expense reduction side that we view this.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, very rarely do I see payers just decide they're going to increase what they pay out, right? I mean,
Yeah. I don't see the payers chomping at the bit to give me more money, so
yeah,
we're not gonna count on that.
yeah. So Jim, so if digital pathology is better for patient care, what do you think will ultimately drive the industry conversion away from microscopy?
I believe when you talk to the majority, if I go to College of American Pathology annual meeting or any of the other industry meetings, you talk to folks. Everybody, as close to everybody as you can have. I mean, it's never everybody. There's always one outlier, but pretty much everybody agrees it will be the standard. The holdup again is capital and implementation risk.
Yeah.
And so I come back to the notion that we larger players are going to be the ones that drive it. And we're going to be, then behind us, hospitals. We work with the Ascension system up in Chicago, and they've actually been very aggressive in pursuing a digital pathology approach. I think they're kind of an outlier in terms of their vision. They always kind of have been. They've always been fantastic at adopting new technologies and being a bit entrepreneurial in that regard. Most hospitals are not that way. And so I see us pushing the hardest. And then behind us will be the hospitals and hospital chains and networks, and then finally the individual groups, where again it makes sense from their perspective. I can see why they hold back a little bit.
No, absolutely. A fun fact, Jim, I actually started my career with Ascension for the first 9 years.
Oh,
So,
really?
yeah. So I came from the hospital setting, and but no, I would agree with your comments about hospital systems adapting this as well. Do you have anything else, any kind of final thoughts? I know we've covered a whole broad spectrum today, but do you have any final comments that you want to leave the viewers with today?
Yeah, I would just say we started this company with a belief and taken a bit of a leap of faith that digital pathology would become the market standard, and become the market standard because it was really kind of the best thing for all. And whether that's improved patient diagnosis and improved turnaround time, more accurate results, greater physician satisfaction, greater physician productivity, all of those things. And I am more bullish that that was the right decision today than I ever have been. And when I look down the future, and I start seeing a little bit and get a little bit of an inkling as to what AI can mean and how it can maybe even pull together other clinical information to the pathologist to make he or she even more informed when they make their diagnostic call. It's just, I learn something new every day that just gets me more excited about it. So I am very bullish on the future of pathology. And yeah, been so glad that we went ahead and formed this company and get to work with the likes of you and making it bigger and stronger.
Yeah, no, I want to second what you said, Jim. I mean, we've noticed at Advanced Strategic Partners, for the listeners that don't know about our company, we are a merger and acquisition firm that specializes specifically in the laboratory diagnostic industry. And we've seen more and more pathology groups contacting us looking for either investors or investment money, or looking to be able to go to the next level. And they're looking to go and move towards digital pathology. So you're quite the visionary, Jim. You absolutely, I think you always have been, based on your track record of success. I congratulate you. Love working with Rob Albert over the last year, and all of your team, and the folks at Iron Capital. I mean, just an amazing group of folks to work with. Super proud of you. And for our listeners out there, I sincerely hope that each and every one of you has gained some valuable tips and you've increased your knowledge on today's episode of The End Game. If you would like to listen to this episode again, you can go to our website at www.advancedstrategicpartners.com and click on the podcast tab. Or you can check us out on Apple and Spotify if you would like to hear this podcast again. If you enjoyed this episode, we always appreciate you providing us with a nice 5-star rating. I look forward to seeing each and every one of you on our future podcast episodes of The End Game. Signing off as your host.